Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Drive Phase podcast with myself, Andrew Hicks, and Mr. Gary Laybourne, who's already in a mood with me just because I've kept him waiting for 14 minutes while we sorted out some technical difficulties, which I'm already getting a load of stick for. Apologies, you'll probably be tuning in and expecting the dulcet, smooth tones of our CEO and founder, James Moore, but I had to take this one for a number of different reasons. Mainly because Gary is a big Plymouth Argyle fan and Coventry currently sit just one place above them in the table, which I actually had to mention, Gary. That's the first thing I checked this morning. It's on goal difference, 2 goal difference, but at this moment in time, mate, I'm absolutely taking that. So apologies for bringing that up straight off the bat.
Back to you, not a problem.
I'm sure that's going to come back to bite me in the backside, but Gary, second time on the podcast.
Yes, thank you for having me back. I clearly didn't mess up, not made an impression on the first one. So that's the main thing, that if I've not banned myself, it's always a win.
Well, mate, and a lot's changed.
It has. Yeah, you're right. Seriously, it has. Yes.
And before we get into the nitty gritty of where Coach Core is, what you've already achieved and where you're going, we've obviously been friends for a number of years, which is why I took this on. This sort of pains me a little bit to say, but you are one of a select few group of people, and the others know who they are, that I genuinely look up to in this industry. And that's because of a number of different things, because weight, speed, all those things. But see, you stopped me, mate. I was being nice then.
I know, sorry.
You stopped me in full focus. You probably feel uncomfortable, but you should have just let me get off return. There are so many people in our industry doing good things, and you, along with a group of other people that I genuinely look up to. And the reasons for that are because there is a business savvy, entrepreneurial mindset, but combined with this genuine drive and passion for doing the right thing, trying to make a difference. And for me, that being a bit of an entrepreneur myself, I guess that blend is the dream for me, right? Trying to actually make a difference, somewhat one way, shape or form, but actually having this sort of business, that's a very difficult thing to do. I see that a lot in our sector, where it's charities or partnerships or foundations, where national governing bodies, where ultimately the goal is to make a difference to select groups of people or to a lot of different people, but also there's a P&L. There has to be a business mindset. And that's a really, really tricky thing to navigate. So just on that, I want you to give, because I know that the charity changed to a charity in 2020. Just give me a sort of potted background of that change, where you were before, the reasons for going for charity, and the sort of just where you are. I was honoured to join you with your new strategy launch, where you celebrated 1,000 apprenticeships delivered.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, 1,000 apprentices that we've supported since July 2012. So I think rewinding back to that point, and certainly given it's the second time on this podcast, I definitely don't want to do kind of origins and stuff. But I do think, to your question, it kind of helps scene set. You know, for us, it started as a program for 20 people. That was it. For 20 young Londoners that came from areas of challenge, were overcoming barriers, you know, one way or another, be that through genetics and race and ethnicity and whatever, through to education, criminal backgrounds, whatever. So just trying to make sure that we got young people that we were working with at the charity at the time into employment through sport, community delivery. Therefore, there's this wonderful ripple effect of not just changing their lives, but changing the community around them as well, from these inspiring young relatable role models. And using apprenticeships as that vehicle, because that ultimately is the double threat of full-time employment, earn while you learn, a tangible, recognized national qualification. And on the third string of it, we get to keep our arms around them, mentor them, support them, and develop them. That's it. It was just meant for that group. And then, as many people know, it then took off across the course of the kind of next 6 to 7 years, whereby it scaled up into different cities involving multiple different employers, holding that real value of a regional, local-led employer consortium from across the sport and physical activity sector to 10 sites before we then attracted our first Sport England monies to allow us the confidence to pitch to leave the host charity, the Royal Foundation at that time. So we then became, exactly to your point, independent charity, all apron strings cut, fundraising for ourselves, full identity and brand, just over 4 years ago, and have continued to grow in that time. Team, income, program size, and obviously the numbers of apprentices that go with it. So it's my professional life's passion. And I think that is always the way round that I would put it. Completely understand and agree with what you're saying. I think you've got to balance those two things. And I've definitely learned to become a business leader later, a purpose-driven passion leader first, because of my own upbringing and the work that I was doing at the time. But also have equal admiration for those that do it the other way around, that make their fortune, make their money, set up successful businesses, and then become led by purpose in different projects. They don't have to do that. So I've got equal admiration for people that do it the other way around. But yeah, fully fledged charity, hoping to take over the world, mate.
I was interested at your new strategy launch, and sat outside in the backdrop of Wembley, your chairman gave the speech of, yes, we've delivered 1,000 and we're trying to get to 1,500, but he's keen not to stop until you could fill Wembley, I think, which is her words, which I love. I absolutely love, But how do you get there? I know the new strategy is around delivering another 500 within 3 years. So considering that and look, startup business charity, there's always a huge amount of runway before you get real traction and get off the ground. How do you get to the next 500? How do you achieve that? Because I guess at the minute you're delivering all this good stuff and these amazing apprenticeships who become, and I've met some of them, and they are genuinely inspiring individuals, right? And I think it's one of those things where you have to sort of see and listen firsthand, maybe to really appreciate the full impact that you have on these people's lives, these kids' lives. But how do you, because you're managing these apprenticeships, but then you've also got to fundraise as a charity. So that's quite a considerable task. How do you do the next 500? What's the barriers to potentially stopping you doing 1,000 rather than 500?
Yeah, and it's a really fair question, because I think Ed's point is almost light-hearted, I suppose, as it was with, for those that didn't see it, again, it was a case of Wembley Stadium sat behind us. We all know that holds 90,000 people. His point being that he wants Coach Core to just grow and increase and ultimately change more young lives, right? And that's a double-edged sword for me, because I hope any charity leader there that's listening or out there, your single goal in life should be not to exist. Like, I don't care what vision you have, your real vision should be that you really hope you don't have to offer your services, right? That's what you do. So there's part of me is sad to think that. But, youth voice census stuff, some of the information in the reports, we're very data led. We're very making sure that we're not off batting in our own way. We want to make sure that we're attached to the current climate and the needs of young people. We know that things aren't getting any better, Andy. Current unemployment sits in this country at about 4%. But if you're under 25, that's at 14%. So for every 100 young people you see, 14% of them are unemployed. They've got nothing, and that's obviously disregarding those in education and stuff as well. And the one that really hit me as well the other day was 55% of young people surveyed at secondary school think they're going to go on to a good job. Nearly half of all kids think they're going to go into a good job. I mean, we've battered the aspirations of these kids already. Nearly half of them think they're not really going to get a good job when they leave. I just find that so incredibly sad.
Just on that point, Matt, I think I have a bit of a problem with how we articulate what a good job is and because that's a subjective term, right? And I think I remember speaking to some football academies many moons ago, and the speaker in front of me said, only 1% of you is going to make it, only 1% this, only 1% that, and maybe not even 1%. And then I actually said, well, it depends how you define 1%, right? If you're defining the 1% as you've got to go and get 25 caps for your country, then absolutely, there's probably less than 1% of these 50 kids that will make it. But you know what? If 10% of these kids go on and play League One, League Two, and make a living out of it for the rest, and have an enjoyable life and enjoyable career, and do something they love doing, well, if you ask my dad, who spent 50 years in a factory and hated every bloody minute of it, he would definitely argue that more than 1% will make it. So, and again, what is a good job? To me, that's something that you genuinely enjoy doing, right? But I think we're probably in a day and age that we probably just put a financial element next to that, right? What is a good job is you earn over this much. So, but it is incredibly troubling to think that, yeah, 55% of secondary school kids think they're going to get a.
You're right. And I think that's an important point, actually. Where do you, and that goes back to our point around, are you passion led and purpose led, or are you, business led and one comes later, whatever. And I think you're right. And there's nothing wrong with this. Some kids and friends of ours, friends of mine, certainly, are motivated by money. That is what they do. Like, that is their benchmark of success, more money, more growth in that sense. Others it's that they feel like they have purpose and worth. And again, that's what I feel our apprenticeships are offering these young people, because it's not just about the lives that they're changing. It's the people that they're influencing and supporting. So we've already talked a couple of times about our 1,000 apprentices. Well, actually, those 1,000 apprentices have worked with 13 million participants, all from the local area, all from that place where that young person is from, not just what we see too much in our sector, which is helicoptering typically white middle-class people in to go and coach certain sports that have very different accents, come from different places. So I think that element of what you deem as a good job is a really fair pushback. But I'd like to think if that question's open enough, regardless of whether it's money or whether it's purpose, only half of those kids feel like they're going to get the job that's going to give them that reward. And I just find that incredibly sad. But some of the more tangible stuff that isn't up for debate is, of all the young offenders were prosecuted in the last 12 months, 40% of them were unemployed. So there is a direct link between that and things like 1 in 3 of young people had to seek financial support to help them with their own education. So it's just, we're in this real swirl. And I think there are certainly an older generation now that look at younger generation and use the word snowflakes and things like that, which, I mean, if you want to find a way to get me ready to square up to people, it's going to be stuff like that. Because I've started passive aggressive pushback is, snowflakes are individual things, aren't they? Like fingerprints, and it's good that they care about their planet and that they want to push back.
And you know what, that, generationally, and this is the thing, right, is that I think people who I speak to, a lot of younger generation who aren't so bothered about a financial return, they genuinely want to do something to make a difference. And I've had a lot of these conversations. I think that's really changed. When I was growing up, I'm not sure if many of my friends or peers will actually go, you know what, I really want a job where I can make a difference. And I speak to a lot of these kids now, and that's genuinely what they're bothered about. If that makes them a snowflake, then I'm more than happy for my daughters to be snowflakes,
There's a reason that, I say this slightly flippantly, certainly in present company, there's a reason that the 1830s and 20s holidays that we all used to go on don't exist anymore. These kids want to go backpacking and volunteer and support things in other places. They don't want to do that sort of lifestyle anymore. And again, exactly to your point, there's then that make that as people raising young girls. Like, I find that fantastic. So yeah, look, I think for us, it's a case of always wanting to make sure sport and physical activity gives us that leverage, right? It gives us the wool to pull over their eyes, that it's something that they care about, that they feel like is a, really sexy, fun job to do. But actually, we continue to undervalue the impact of our own sector year in, year out, right? Like, we know the different career pathways that are available to us. You can become a doctor through sport. You become a media person through sport, an agent of law through sport, all of these different things. And ultimately, that's our job. We spoke beforehand around the different types of employers that work with Coach Core and stuff. And, even some of those leisure centres that have single focused for many, many years on PTs and lifeguards and front of house. And that's basically where they draw from the same workforce well. And as ever, there's nothing wrong with that. But we're seeing more and more leisure centres now, certainly those community-facing ones, that say, do you know what, we want to go beyond just our 4 walls and actually open ourselves up and bring our community in more. So we're going to need activators and coaches to do that. And particularly when you've not got qualifications any longer that are as easy to access as fly-by-night cowboys that used to operate, that would just rush you through a course and get you qualified to go and lift some weights in a gym. Now that there's some real check and challenge around those quals, we're able to provide these sorts of solutions. But critically, it's young people from that local area that really care about their local area and want to see change, that are the ones doing delivering. So if I am, let's say, a woman of color and I go to a sports club, who's the first person I'm going to meet? I say this all the time on coaching podcasts or, whatever. Who am I going to meet? Who's my first experience of this club? Because if it's a negative one, my ass is straight back out the door. So that's all we're here to try and do, is to give these young kids a springboard and a platform to realize the talent that they've always had, to give employers really exciting, new, diverse workforce that's not only going to, fill some of those junior mid positions, but actually are going to give them new ideas, new energy, new opportunities that they've never had before because they've always recruited in the same way. And it's going to give the community somebody that looks like them, sounds like them, and comes from that local area. So that's why I am, as you can tell, hugely passionate about the work that we do.
Just on that, the first experience you have of a sport, physical activity is everything, right? And my background's in golf, probably one of arguably the most intimidating environments to ever walk into, right?
Yeah. When we last played about the clubhouse, and people are still going through that today.
I will tell that. I was 17 years old, my first ever British Open qualifier. I went to a certain golf course with my mum in a rusty old Fiat Tipo. She dropped me off. She said, well, I'll walk in because, you got the RNA banners and everything around there. And it wasn't someone from the RNA before I get village, but rusty old Tipo, parked to the back of the car park. We went waltzing in quite sheepishly, me and my mum, and this old boy came running over in a suit and tie, came running over as if there was some absolute critical emergency. I said, stop. He said, oh, what's wrong? He said, oh, ladies' entrances down the hallway. I just saw my mum. So I just get red. And I was like, at the time, I was like, oh, sorry, Mum, I'll sort of meet you around the back. But, hey, look, I'd love to be optimistic and think that times have changed and things have moved on, but I don't think they've moved on enough. Nowhere near enough. And look, I think we could point the finger at a lot of different sports. Just coming back onto one of your points around data, I run a software company and a lot of what we do is analyzing data. And there seems to be so much evidence and so much data in our sector that points in a certain direction, but we just don't seem to pay any attention to it. And I don't know why that is, whether we're talking about obesity levels, inactivity, mental health, the benefits of activity, the benefits of sport, the benefits on our community. We all know it, right? We all get it. And all the data points in exactly the same way. It doesn't feel like we're acknowledging that data. I don't know. It just seems like a huge frustration because every month there seems to be new data around something. And like I say, it all points in the direction of, you know what? If we wrap our arms around sport and recreation and physical activity and community, the world's a better place. You know what I mean? I just think
it's a healthier place. It's a happier place. It's a more economically thriving place. Listen, I agree with you. I know you and I will bang our heads over, against the wall on this. And I've almost come full circle on it. So you asked earlier about the growth of Coach Core, which I'm happy to kind of come back to in a second. But certainly one of those things are, we were the same, right? So when we got the opportunity to steer our own ship, okay, so we've improved young people's lives, their health and happiness by X%, something like that, right? And you go, that's amazing. Why is no one listening? That's an important thing. That's really important. Somebody now feels much more better about their lives, about their future prospects. White noise, because every charity is pumping those figures out. So we then go to, our sector North Stars, the Sport Englands of the world. How would you like us to feed that data in? Can we make a bigger noise if we put all our microphones together? Right, great. So we'll start to track some of those things that align with active lives. And that's my point. I have been a disruptor and a cage rattler my whole life, pretty much, but certainly in Coach Core. But there are things where we want to make sure that we are part of the movement and facing in the same direction. And this is definitely one of those areas. So in the same way that we talk about ourselves as a social mobility charity, taking a young person from point A to point B. So why would we not want to speak the language of the Social Mobility Commission? That work's already done. Let's not go and make another report and another thing to do, right? And yet it's still white noise. So we're now starting to say, okay, well, let's back this up, because we've told government, they've seen these stats and figures for God knows how many years, that if you invest £1 into the NHS, into physical activity, we are going to save the NHS, 5, 6, 7 times, because people are healthier and not straining it. No one seems to want to listen at the moment. So I'm hoping under this new current government, I should say, beg your pardon, their agenda on health, they will start to pay more attention to this. We live in hope. But what we've started to do is actually talk about, okay, well, if you're not going to listen to that part, which bit will you listen to? So I'm just about to release a blog shortly. So apprenticeships have been great, obviously, and we will bang that drum forever. The shift to the focus on apprenticeships through the apprenticeship levy that took place in 2017, fantastic. We should now be 7 years on, swamped with apprenticeships, and yet we're not. We've lost half of all level 2 and level 3s at junior levels, because what businesses have done is just retrain existing staff, because there's a cheaper, easier way to get them to almost a degree senior management level way of doing this, right? So that's what they're using their money on. And yet 4% of all businesses are using their levy. 96% of them are handing that money back to the Treasury, which accounts for about, I think it was 3 billion or something that was returned to the Treasury. So that just goes back into a black hole. Now we're standing here going, look, we're not asking for new money. We're asking for that money to go means tested, which is a very easy thing to do based on postcodes or whatever, to young people and to employers critically that need that funds most, that want to give a young person a chance, that want to engage in entry-level apprenticeships. But in the current climate of rising costs, they're just going with safer bets of more experienced, even existing staff. So we're trying to take an attack around, okay, if you're not going to listen to the health outcomes of what we're promoting here, have a listen to what we could save the economy if we just use this money a little bit better. So it's trying, as ever in life, if one lever's not working, which one can we pull? And hopefully that makes people sit up. But again, that's just with a bit of a cynical view to trying to accelerate and grow what we're doing, because ultimately what we want to do is make more young people healthier, happier, and have better future prospects. So it doesn't change anything.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good segue into, I guess, probably my main question, because I think these might be cynical questions, but we're going into a time of austerity and people, short on time, people short on capital, short on people. I understand the benefits to the apprenticeship that you place into businesses. What I want to do is, and for the people that are listening to this, some of our current clients and partners who are franchises, sports coaching, activity providers, leisure centres, football foundations, whatever it might be, why Coach Core?
I think, as ever, listen, I don't feel that I have to stand here and talk about us being the best thing since sliced bread. We're not in competition with anybody. The point being that what we want to see is apprenticeships in this country, outside of our sector included, just taken that bit more seriously. When you look at, I was saw really one of my best friends during the week, whose daughter's at uni. She's working near enough full-time hours around her university course to make sure that she doesn't come out in debt. Now, the career that she wants to go into doesn't have an apprenticeship equivalent. It can only be done through a degree. So I have zero problem with that. Fantastic. There is still absolutely a place for university. But despite her working that, despite her saving going in, she is still going to come out £40,000 in debt at best, right? So what we're trying to say is, where is the education at school level earlier in the journey to educate more people about apprenticeships, right? And when it comes to it, those that fall through the net, that is going to be there to support some of those young people that have lost their way, not quite found the vocation that they wanted, perhaps had a bit of trouble in the past, or didn't quite get the grades that they wanted. We're an organization that's there to pick it up, right? Now, you've got other sectors, mechanics, plumbers. Apprenticeships has worked for that sector for decades and decades and decades, right? And it shows you the art of the possible. So for us, sport and physical activity still, I don't feel, has embraced it fully. So we've still got a job to do to bang that drum. whenever someone comes to us and says, look, we're working with this college and we're doing apprenticeships, expecting us to almost sort of then start to do the sales pitch, my first reply is amazing, brilliant. You clearly understand the benefits of work-based learning. You guys crack on. But the difference between what we do is you cannot, my experience as someone who's come up living in an area of challenge, worked with kids my entire life that, pretty much have all come from areas of challenge or, marginalized groups. They need a little extra support. And the current apprenticeship system, pretty much every other apprenticeship program that you'll find, certainly in our sector, is what I call the traditional apprenticeship delivery. So that is 4 days a week in one job, 1 day a week at college. Again, nothing wrong with that. But if you're targeting people that need that little extra bit of support, that's where our model is different. So we bring the training provider to them and to the employer. So our learning coaches through our training provider are going around and supporting young people in the field, right? So the mentoring, personal development aspect, we are really rigorous in our screening of our employers to make sure that they've got the right mentors, that first person that they bump into, as we talked about earlier. So that personal support is as important to me and to us as it is the professional support. They then start on this journey where they're working on still the same recognized off the peg qualification, the community activator at level 2 or the community sports health officer level 3, whatever it might be. You can get them anywhere. But what we're doing is we're combining employers. We're fundraising a little extra to help support some of those costs that employers have to bear, particularly if they're supporting young people with special needs, coming from marginalized backgrounds that can't afford the travel, yada, yada, yada. So we're doing that in our typical charity way. But by giving a grant to an employer, what that also means is we can hold them to account. So I can say to Andy Hicks Coaching, here's the grant, here's the qualification. We take all that red tape away from you. All you have to do is focus on being a bloody good employer. If you've got someone pre-identified, fantastic. If not, we can go and find someone for you because we've got tons of partnership services and referral services we're working with. Here's the quid pro quo. You need to come and deliver some of your golf coaching sessions or your fantastic digital platform. I want to educate all of the apprentices on that. That's all you have to do. But when you start to stack all of that up, that young person's CV now really starts to look impressive. It's that qualification, but it's also X and Y and Z that all the employers and the national partners that we work with start to feed in. And those employers gain benefit because they're working locally with other organizations that they perhaps never would have. So a football trust is now understanding that there's this micro business down the road that's only working in disability sport, that's working with a fantastic leisure centre that's happy to give its facilities open, and round we go. So we just believe in the power of partnership and collaboration. We're not doing anything special. We're not paying for that. Like, that's just people combining on this unified central journey of, we want to give these young kids the best possible chance of success. And hopefully they stay with us, buy into what we're doing, and carry on with us as our long-term workforce as well. And we know, again, through 12 years, given that we're purposely targeting young people with extra challenge, we are miles ahead. Whatever parameter you want to put it, we are miles ahead of national average. Graduation, ethnicity of background, start-up issues in terms of learning requirements, things like that, way ahead because of that element of bringing a lot of people around the table and putting a lot of things into that young person from the start, during, and at the finish. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, absolutely. Just for the people that are listening to this as a checklist.
Yeah.
If you are a organization within sport, physical activity, leisure, recreation, and you're a bloody good employer, and you've heard what Gary's just said, then please get in touch. And again, I think that was really, really helpful because I think, again, from a sort of cynical point of view, I want people to listen to this and go, you know what? That sounds like a bloody good idea. Why aren't we doing that? Why aren't we leaning in on this?
Yeah, well, and even that's a bit too far down the line. Even if it's a case of, and this is where we take our system partner role of Sport England really seriously, because I can't stand in front of you and say, what we want is a lot more kids just doing apprenticeships, full stop, Andy. And then have this massive sales pitch about Coach Core, about why then we are the best thing since sliced bread because we're going to go and pitch to it. That's not the case. Like, if you are the employer that you just said, your ears have pricked up and you thought, you know what, we would like to take on a bit of a different diverse workforce, or we're struggling to recruit young people at the moment, or we don't really know about entry-level apprenticeship. Come and have a conversation with us. We will help advise and support you as much as we will say, look, if it's a right time, right place, and there's a coach call program about to start that you want to jump on, like freaking amazing. But if not, and we can just give you a bit of support and help, we're here for that. Like, we are absolutely here for that. Amazing. And that's why, that's within our charitable lens. That's where we're saying to corporate and commercial partners, look, the more that we can put capacity behind this, the more young people ultimately we're going to be able to support, and the more businesses we can give advice to. At the moment, that's our only constraint, going right back to, I think, your first question. That's the only thing stopping us from filling Wembley Stadium to Ed's ambition. It's just simply the headcount that we need. And we don't need to be this huge charity. But I think we failed if we get to, the even half the size of some of the big, well-known household charities, because the point of our model is to collaborate and bring partners together to make the good stuff happen. We don't need to be there per se, but when you're now talking 250 odd employers, 400 when you're adding in different partners and connected services around that, and 1,000 apprentices, my team, there's only 12 of us at the moment, right? We don't need to grow huge, but we're making all of that happen on a very small team. So it's that's the only thing constraining us from doing more qualifications in more areas with more young people.
So I guess that's the call to arms from me, is that, hey, look, if you've listened to this and there's no obligation, and if it just ends up being a chat and a bit of advice and a bit of an introduction, then get in touch. And it's an amazing team. I think I've met the vast majority of them. They're all incredible human beings, and they're all very friendly. So there's no harm in just getting in touch, just having the conversation. And I suppose, look, before we end up, mate, I have to sort of announce our partnership. Incredibly proud for Coordinate to be supporting Coach Core. I'm not sure if we'll have launched it by the time this comes out, so I might be jumping the gun, or I might be a bit late. But anyway, I'm sure I'll be forgiven either way. But hey, look, mate, we Coordinate works with. We have exactly the same sort of partner audience, so we're incredibly excited to support you any small way. But mate, I think you've articulated that really well, and even I'm a lot clearer on the benefits of Coach Core and what you're doing. And again, it kills me to say it, but bloody well done, mate.
Thank you. No, it's just a bit normally where I'll banter back, but I'm genuinely so appreciative of the support. I think, and again, always trying to link things back round. So we started this conversation talking about purpose. I mean, certainly you'll know, and put a couple of siders in me, and other people will start to know. If there's certain individuals or organisations that were to put their hand up and say, oh, we'll want to come and support Coach Core. If it doesn't match our purpose and our values, like, I'm not here to take money just for the sake of doing it. And I think, for us to establish what should always be proper charitable partnerships, as in us giving back to the organisation as much as the organisation is going to lean in and put to us, that is what real CSR and real charity partnerships should look like. So I'm really excited by what we're going to be venturing on and starting on, and where that might go for us all in the future. And likewise, I think for us, that's the strength of what we do, because we're fortunate, the outcomes that we're having sit across so many things. If you're passionate about young people, well, that's Coach Core. If you're passionate about sport and physical activity, that's Coach Core. If you're passionate about education, crime reduction, guess what? So, we can really start to help navigate our partners through some of that, work with you guys on, some really exciting projects and stuff. So yeah, I'm buzzing. Can't wait.
Yeah. Gary, thanks so much, mate.